Welcome to Journaling with Nature, the podcast for those who want to turn curiosity into wonder, a pencil sketch into a rabbit hole of discovery, a moment of stillness into a life full of joy. I'm your host, Bethan Burton. Let's open the pages of our nature journals and explore this world together. Hello, this is episode 8. Today I'm speaking with Elizabeth Mills. She's a marine biologist, nature journaler and creator of the amazing YouTube channel Marine Mumbles. If you love science, nature, marine life, rock pooling or nature journaling or all of these things, you've got to watch her channel. Also, if you like science puns, then Elizabeth is your girl because she's full of them. Thank you so much for being here, Elizabeth.
Hi. Oh, I love the introduction. Full of science puns. That's it. That's what I want to be known as. I will change my CV only to.
Well, that's my first question. How do you come up with so many puns in one episode?
I think it's ingrained. It's been ingrained for a long time. As I've gone through the undergrad, I just love a good pun. And in fact, I mean, even on my undergrad course, it was kind of a thing with everyone and like lecturers and stuff. You just make cheesy puns as you went, and I mean, the cheesier the better.
So cute. You've picked up the habit.
Yeah. Now I think I say them without even like knowing that they're puns. I just say them because like they have to say it. It's almost obligatory now.
So cute. Your channel is just so delightful. Like I just watch it with a huge smile on my face every episode. And I think that's just a beautiful thing. You know, you're educating people, but also you're making people smile, and it's amazing.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. I mean, that is the goal. It's just to make people super happy with it, because I'm super happy when I see it, and I just wanted to share that. And I think the YouTube channel started at the start partly just as a way to, you know, bring a smile to people's faces. I wanted it to be fun and joyful and, you know, show you the awesome world of marine life and have a bit of escapism. And it's been quite nice that was the entry for it, and I can still keep that up. But I've been, you know, I can also move in now and kind of bring in more marine themes about teaching people the importance of our oceans. And like, I like that at the start it was just fun, and now I can use that fun to hopefully educate people and get them involved in marine conservation and stuff like that. So it's like it's been really fun to do that.
Well, you do that so well. Those are your goals, and you're absolutely hitting the mark. It's just such a fun channel. I wonder how did it all start for you? How did you fall in love with the ocean? Have you always had this passion, or did it develop in some way?
I think I've always had it. I think a big part of it was I grew up near the coast on the Isle of Sheppey, which is in Kent. It's not an idyllic island in the sense of, you know, don't think anything tropical or like a lovely, you know, Scottish island, but I was lucky enough to be surrounded by coastline, and just been on the beach ever since I was a kid. Me and my dad used to go crabbing, we go fishing, so many hours just spent on the beach. And I can't remember when I wanted to be a marine biologist. I remember being at 8 or 9 and changing schools and having my t-shirt signed, and someone said like, good luck being a dolphin trainer, like my teacher or something. And I remember getting angry at them, being like, marine biology is not just dolphin training. So at age 8 I knew enough about marine biology to want to do it and know what it was, but I wish I would pay like a lot of money to go back in time for some, you know, some person to pull that out of my brain at the exact point I decided to be a marine biologist or to fall in love with the ocean. But it's just always been there.
That's amazing that you knew right from the start. I mean, everyone as kids gets asked that question, you know, what do you want to be? And we all say gymnast, or I remember I used to want to be a gymnast, because I knew gymnasts had to, you know, train very young. And after I retired as a gymnast at age 23, I was going to go in the Olympics for horse riding.
Oh, yeah.
But it's so cool that you had this answer right from the start, and you've done it.
Yeah, I don't know where it came from. I'm very stubborn as a person. Like, it could literally have been me as like a 3-year-old hearing the first job ever, and that be me picking it. But I feel very lucky that I've got to become a marine biologist and that I managed to do it. But I've worked really hard to get here, and but it's just odd that I never wanted to work hard at. It was just always going to be this. I didn't ever deviate, and I feel very lucky for that, because to know where you want to go and to have that path and not even have to consider it is a bit rare, a bit weird. I don't quite understand it, but I'm loving the fact that every day I still get to do what I love, and I haven't regretted that, weird stubborn decision I made, and I can't even remember when
Yeah.
I made it.
I just love that. It's so cool. And so now you're living in Dundee in Scotland, and I'm wondering about nature around you where you are now. It's a coastal place again.
Yeah.
What can you see when you go outside?
So Dundee is really cool. I wish I had the book. There's a book by Kelly Brenner who talks about all the nature in the cities, and I'm sure I could probably tell you a ton more nature in the cities if I'm halfway through that book when I finish that. But obviously I'm a marine biologist, so I focus on the coastal stuff. And it's really cool. It is cut off from the coast in the sense that there's a big seawall between you and the sea. So for me,
Okay.
maybe a bit too far, which is hilarious because it's right on the coast. But I like easy access to rock pooling. But if I can hear seagulls outside my house, then it's fine. And so there's lots of marine life around in Scotland. Anyway, 20 minutes outside of Dundee, you're straight on the coast, and it's just miles and miles and miles up and down. And even I used to work showing people on this boat, like boat tours, because you get dolphins on the Tay, which is the river estuary that Dundee is sitting right in the end of. So you can see dolphins just at the weekend in summer if
Wow.
you head down to the beach. So that's really cool. But I mean, Scotland has such incredible wildlife. Like 2 hours up from Dundee is the Cairngorms, full of like incredible creatures, and then the coast the whole way round, just loads and loads of life. So
Oh,
yeah.
it sounds amazing. And part of your channel, you have a series called Sea Life Sketchbook Sessions, which I absolutely love. And in these sessions, you draw and paint something weird and wonderful from the ocean in your sketchbook while sharing footage and explaining more about the creatures that you're drawing. And so this form of nature journaling is just so wonderful, this way that you're recording yourself and looking into these wild creatures that you see in there. And I'm wondering, when your nature journal journey started, was it through university? Was it through another channel? How did all that start for you, the nature journaling side of it?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan of nature journals and sketchbooks, and just ever since I was a kid, just I mean, there's something amazing about a gorgeous nature journal spread, which is, I mean, it's always the goal. I don't think I've got even close to reaching the amazing artwork that is out there, but that is part of my goal. I think nature journey probably started during my last year, going into my last year of undergrad, because we had this field trip right at the start, and I knew that we had to learn and had at the end like this test where we had to learn loads of species, and they would like spot test us on the Latin names. So I spent the
Okay.
summer drawing the species and like learning it and kind of putting it in this notebook, not really thinking it was nature journaling, more just out of
Mm.
learning it. And I managed to learn like 30 species and thought, that's it, I'm sorted. I've nailed all of them. I've learned them all. It's great. And I got there, and like within the space of a week, we had learned like over 250 species or something. And I was like, oh
Oh,
no.
wow.
So I was, but I realized that what stuck in my head was, obviously I had more time with 30, but if I drew them, then I could remember them,
Learn more.
and you notice more. If you ID something, you have to look at it and have to know it. And drawing is exactly the same thing. Like and it solidifies it in your head. You can't draw something without recognizing how to ID it, even if you're not drawing for that sake and that purpose. So I think it probably started then when I needed to learn stuff, but now it's just kind of moved into like fun and just enjoying getting to learn about the species, but just paint and sit down and relax and solidify that a bit more in my head, which is really fun.
Yeah, that what you just said, it encompasses so much, that idea that if you draw something or go deeply into it, explore it in your nature journal, that it sinks into your mind. And I also find that it sinks into you in a different way, like you become really attached to the species. Do you feel that same thing? Like you get a rapport, a friendship with the species?
Oh, totally. I'm terrible for that anyway. I mean, I'm going around rock pooling, like saying hello to all these
Yeah.
creatures like they're my friends. Like, and but drawing them, yeah, absolutely, definitely, because you just get this little glimpse into their life, and you're giving up part of your time to learn that and
Yes.
to draw it, and by doing that, you just can't help but admire them. And I think comes into the choices that you make when you pick a species. Like, I'll often pick a species I don't know about because I want to learn more, and it makes it more exciting to be able to sit there and sketch. Whereas if I'm doing like maybe a painting that's not kind of a sketchbook nature journal thing, I'll pick a species that I like, but I already maybe know about, because I don't need that connection to learn about it. Whereas I really love sitting down and using that nature page to connect, to learn, as well as, you know, have fun painting, because it's always really, really fun.
Yeah, that's so good. And fun is a word that I just attach with you and your channel and the things you do, because, you know, you did this one journal spread that I just love, and it was the one where you had all the fold out things, all the little flaps and stuff. Can you describe that page? Do you remember it?
Yeah, I do. I mean, that was, for me, was like mid lockdown. I mean, I had not got to the coast in so long. I hadn't been around humans. So I particularly love that page, because I was just like, right, I can't get to the rocky shore. I don't think I'm going to get there for a while. Let's paint it and make it. And sitting there and picking all the species as much as I could fit into my tiny sketchbook. And I was like, oh, what if, you know, I love turning over rocks. Let's put a flap in so we can turn over the rock. And
exactly.
Yeah, I just kind of lost myself in that sketchbook page. It's one of my, I think, might be my favorite page, because I just felt like I was rock pooling when I couldn't be rock pooling, and it just made that all the more special.
That is so good. Like that actual action of physically turning something or uncovering something. I just love that. And I haven't done that before, but it just occurred to me that it'd be a really fun addition to nature journaling with kids, like to add those extra dimensions.
Yeah, it kind of, I suppose, well, not really inspiration. I mean, it's just turning over a bit of flapper paper, so it's not so much inspiration of that. But I have, like, when I was a kid, I had all these like journals with dragons in and stuff, and it was like this field guide for dragon thing, and I just loved them, and amazing. But it had all these flaps and little envelopes and things, and I just kind of, I think, I don't know about you, but I think during lockdown as well, we all reverted back to our comfort zones.
Totally.
And a part of that, I was like, oh yeah, what if we were like exploring a rock pool, and like, I really want like a little page with a little envelope or something in. I don't really think that fits into rocky shores, but it's just, you know, admiring gorgeous journal pages.
Yeah, my son is 3 years old, and he just loves books with flaps. And sometimes he'll say, I'll say, what do you want to read? He'll said, at the library, and he says, I just want a flap book, and we have to go through and we have to find all the flap books. But I just thought that would be really fun to do that with him as well, like to stick things in and open them out. You've given me like a whole new repertoire of things to do with him.
Oh, great. And I mean, it teaches them something, I mean, instantly, that there's different species on the bottom and the top of a rock, which not a lot of people know. And it's why when I'm rock pooling, you have to try and say, like, you have to turn the rock back over, because the species that live on the bottom are different to the species at the top, and if you don't put the rock back, they'll die. And so, I mean, it just thought that was a really simple way to teach that lesson as well, and keep reiterating that, because that's quite important. If you're going rock pooling, you're turning over 50 rocks, you don't want to disturb the hundreds of species that are on those 50 rocks. But it's also really fun just to turn over a flap, so
that's so interesting. Yeah, that's something that people might not instinctually do, but that's really important for the species. Now, this is a question, it may be a really stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Watching your channel, I just see that the ocean is full of the weirdest things you'd ever see, and I wonder why there are so many weird things in the ocean compared with on the land. Don't you think there's a disproportionate number of incredibly weird stuff?
I mean, that might be that's probably the reason I wanted to be a marine biologist, was find the weirdest species and let's study them.
Yeah. Do you have an answer? Do you know why there are so many weird things?
I would say, I mean, just using the rock, I am obsessed with rock pooling, so using that as an example, nowhere else in the world does the species change, but the conditions that the species have to change so much in such a little space, because the species at the top of the shore are out of water for almost like half the day, and then that underwater for the other half, so they have to live in both, which is completely different. And then a meter later, that might get an hour's more, and it just changes meter by meter as you go. And so in that way, the physical water being there and then not being there can lead to really weird things. But then once you get in water, there's things like pressure that plays out. I mean, have you ever gone in a swimming pool and like dived to the bottom and your ears have popped? Like, that's because in that short space of time the pressure has changed. I think it is £14 per square inch more pressure each 10 meters. So a little square will have like £14 more in it all the way down. And by the time you get down to the bottom of the deep sea, things are weird.
Down there there's some super weird.
Yeah, like at that point they're basically almost this is a terrible description, and I suppose if a deep sea biologist would have a go at me, but they're more liquid than they are solid. They're not actually liquid. They are made of, but they're made of like fats and oils and things, because the pressure is so much that they would just burst or not survive if they didn't change their physiology. So you've got all that kind of playing into its part, and there's also a lot of competition. Like 70% of the earth is ocean, so you might think, oh my god, the reason there's more weird is because there's more space for more creatures. And yes, that is true, but a lot of it is limited to the top 200 meters because of light and pressure and everything. So everywhere in the ocean is completely competitive. And the rocky shore is a great example of that. There is barely a spot on that shore that doesn't have a species on there. And if there's not a species on there, it's probably because it's been eaten. And so that mass competition for space, but so many species in it, has kind of led to just, trying to like make the weirdest creatures ever. And another cool example, I might just cut me off if I'm rambling on too long.
No, this is amazing.
But I always love the idea that sea snails, especially in the tropics, can be pretty evil. Like the cone snail is one of the most poisonous species on the planet, and I remember learning about it and thinking like, what they were like. One of the lecturers asked like, why are they so poisonous? And I was like, I have no idea. And I was like, because if they want to eat a fish, they have to literally dart it and kill it on sight. Because if it swims off too far, that snail is going to take 2 days to get it, and something else is going to eat it. So it has to be super poisonous to kill this giant thing. But then thinking about it, like, it's only the fact that it's in the sea and there's water there that means that fish, that snail was trying to eat a fish. A land snail was not going to, there's nothing swimming past a land snail for it to eat. It's just going to stick to, its usual food. It's like grazing on things. And it just means that you're not just looking at flat anymore. You're not just looking at land. And I suppose rainforest, there's loads of things in that rainforest, because it's not only just the ground, but it's up as well. But in the sea, it's just 3D life, everywhere. And I think it's just all kind of led to one weird mess of amazement.
I love that, one weird mess of amazement. That's a good that's a good soundbite. I love it. Yeah, it is quite amazing when you look at the different zones of the ocean. Like I remember as a girl, those supplements that you can pull out of the middle of the newspaper sometimes, and they're for kids, and there was one that was like a description of deep sea fish, and I just remember the feeling of looking at those things, because I'd never seen them before. I can't remember how old I was, but I must have been 7 or around that age, and I just remember looking at these things that are just spines, and the anglerfish with the light coming down, and just being totally blown away that these things actually existed. And it's beautiful that that researchers actually go down there and find out for us, because it would be easy to never know about that. But you look at any of those zones in the ocean, and some crazy creature has adapted itself to live there, and that is just something miraculous.
Yeah, I have a whole video actually where I like painted my way down to the deep sea on like to scale with like this giant bit of cardboard, just because I wanted to learn about it. I was like, hopefully other people do, but I wanted to sit there and learn about all these weird creatures. And the distance it's really bizarre, like between the different deep sea creatures. You think they're all in the deep sea, but actually there's like hundreds and hundreds of meters between where each one of them all live, because it's so sparse and so deep. And I think we know more about the surface of Mars than we do about our own surface of the ocean, like our deep sea, which is just, mind-blowing, and just so exciting that we can keep learning about it. And, as technology advances, we can go down there. Someone get me in a tiny submarine. I'm desperate. I mean, I don't.
Would you go down if you had the chance? Would you go down?
I would. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. You'd be a bit scared, wouldn't you? But like, you can't say no. You can't say no to that whatsoever. I would desperately love to. I don't think I don't think I'll be one of the rare few, but if it ever comes up. Oh, sorry, that's my door for my delivery.
That's okay.
Do you mind if I get it?
That's okay. While Elizabeth is getting the door, I want to remind you to go to YouTube and her channel Marine Mumbles and hit subscribe. It helps her grow, and watching her channel is an absolutely joyous experience.
Sorry, that is so typical.
No, that's okay.
All day it could have come, this delivery.
So I want to talk about something that I saw you chat about on your channel. So in April, during lockdown, you were walking and you came across a buzzard eating some prey, and it says something about your mind, the way that your mind works, that immediately you thought of the ocean when you saw a buzzard on.
Yeah.
And not many people would have been making this connection, but the story of what happened in your mind and how this connection came about is really interesting. Can you talk about the bryozoan with a bird's head?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm literally always, I suppose, thinking about the ocean in some way, or video ideas. I love doing YouTube and I love doing the channel. And so it's just little things I'm always looking for to like spark inspiration. And I would say in lockdown that is kind of heightened because you're just desperate for any sort of like new content or like any connection to the ocean. But it was really cool to see this. I think it was a buzzard or a bird of prey of some sort. And one of the great things about being in Scotland, just that was just in the local park, like it was great. And it just reminded me of learning about these type of bryozoans. So bryozoans are really cool anyway. They're very weird, which is why I love them so much.
Can you describe what a bryozoan is?
Yeah, there's two different types. So one grows on rocks, looks like a bit like a crisp and kind of encrusts stuff, and another one will grow up and look a bit like a tree. And but they're actually little tiny organisms. I suppose if you imagine if you were drawing a tree, but you just drew a tree out of tiny circles as you drew it up. And each tiny circle is actually an individual bryozoan, but they call them a zooid. And together they form a colony, and they kind of all work together. But each individual animal, and it looks like a plant. Like, it's very bizarre that each of these is it, which makes them really bizarre. And this one in particular is called the erect type, so the one that grows up like a tree, has on some of its little zooids, each individual kind of has this thing that looks like a bird's head. And I suppose checking out the video is the best way to see it, because I've videoed them looking down a microscope.
Yeah, it was super weird.
It is literally the exact replica of what you imagine a bird of prey skull's head to be. And I found out about it because I was training as part of my PhD to look at invasive species, and there are a few invasive erect bryozoans in the UK, and there are also quite a few native ones. And bryozoans are also notoriously difficult to ID. There are books of hundreds and hundreds of pages, and literally sometimes this group of species, to tell the difference between an invasive and a native, you're looking at the shape of the beak on this bryozoan. So on this tiny tree, on this tiny zooid, is a tiny bird's head, and you're looking at the beak of this bird's head to tell if it's slightly more pointy or slightly less pointy. And that's the only difference sometimes between the identifying feature. Bizarre. And so I think that, the hours I've spent in the lab looking at these bird heads, definitely that was probably
that's why
reason.
It sunk into your consciousness.
Straight away. But it was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. And I've tried to research why they look like birds' heads, but the only way I can think of it, or the only thing I found, was that it's trying to stop things settling on it and trying to keep it clear. So it's the perfect way to kind of peck off different species.
It was literally moving down, like pecking.
Yeah, and it's not something I came across at undergrad or before, because a lot of the species, you need to see them alive. You need to collect them, see them alive, and look under a microscope. Whereas sometimes you're working with things that are preserved, and without seeing them moving like a bird's head, you wouldn't. It just makes it so much weirder because they are pecking. And you're like, oh my god, it's a bird head, and you're pecking. It's very strange.
When I saw that, I just thought, I've got to talk to you about that, because two things. One, that you see a bird in a forest and you think of the ocean, and also just because it's so weird.
Yeah. You saying that makes it seem weirder to me that I would think of Bryce. It puts it into perspective of like, oh wow, yeah.
No, it makes sense now because you've looked at them in the microscope for hours, and
it is true. Yeah, but it was one of the most exciting things that I've discovered. Like I love discovering new things, and I moved I don't know if I've said on here, but I done an undergrad in marine biology, and I'm moving forward and doing like a master's, and now I'm doing a PhD. My PhD is also in engineering, um, because I look at what grows on man-made surfaces. So the engineering side comes into the man-made surface. So I feel like as you move forward, sometimes in academia, you can get complacent and just learn about that very small area that you're researching.
Yep.
So coming across something new and like learning about a new species, or like getting to go and train with people, was just so exciting that it just made it like, back to when my undergrad days, where I still thought there were only like 2 species of crab or something, and then you like, there's so many species of crab, what? Just, I love those moments so much.
That's beautiful. And part of your undergraduate studies, you had the opportunity to study tropical marine life in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some of the things you saw there, and especially the Christmas tree worm?
Yeah, I mean, what an opportunity. Again, I'm so lucky. I mean, how great is it that I chose to become a marine biologist?
Yeah,
like, that's
you
just
get to
such
go
a good
all around
career. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was really fun. Puerto Rico was incredible and amazing, and we were on this like tiny private island, which was just like for this marine biology center. So we got to snorkel around it and go off and do all these amazing snorkel trips. The Christmas tree worms were one of my favorite because they are just so charismatic. I suppose it was just, you swim near them and they just disappear. So they live in corals and they bury in these corals. So you can't actually see the worm when they're inside. But then the way that they feed is they have these tentacles, and they literally have grown like a Christmas tree. Like it's the exact replica of a Christmas tree, but imagine them being like red and green and blue and every striped color combination in between. Like they're incredible. But what makes them even cooler is that they get scared. So if you swim near them,
So
they go away.
pull in.
I know, and I never. You should definitely try to limit your disturbance of any creature you see in your rock pooling and stuff. But it was very tempting to keep
harassing them to go.
It's like you'd be swimming past them and they just disappear, and you'd be like, "Oh, poor things," and then they pop straight back out, and you'd want to have another look.
Did they come straight out? How long between going in and coming out?
It's not very long. I think they're very. I don't know how they do it. I mean, it must be on, I don't know, vibrations or something, but they disappear straight away, and then as soon as you're gone, they kind of pop back up, or they'll pop back up as soon as you've not eaten them straight away. So this literally, you're swimming through corals, which are fantastic, but you just see these little Christmas tree worms popping up and down all the time, like a jack in the box. It's just the most bizarre, cool thing. You just can't help but watch them and be amazed by them.
How big were they? In the video, I couldn't really get a scale.
They're about 5 centimeters, I think. Not too big. Some are bigger, but a lot of them are about 5 centimeters. Not very big. No bigger than your finger as the biggest kind of one. That's terrible because people have different hand sizes, but you know what I mean?
It gives an estimation.
Yeah, like a little finger of someone with a big hand.
And you did this beautiful journal page of the Christmas tree worms, and I just loved what you did. It was so bright and it was so representative of that landscape that you were. I should say landscape, but what do you call it if it's a landscape underwater? Seascape. When I think of seascape, I think of like a painting with like
the
sand
sea
and the
in
beach
it.
or whatever.
Yeah. I don't know.
Underwater landscape.
Underwater landscape. Yeah, I suppose. I'm trying to think what I use on my hashtags at Instagram. All of them, I think. Just like whatever anyone wants to look. Everything. Yeah, they are really cool. And I also love that it's so un-Christmassy. Like that painting is like, there's almost no Christmas colours except for like the reds and greens, but they're like neon colours, but still they're Christmas tree worms because they're unmistakable. And I love that it's a different take on Christmas.
Was this underwater landscape in Puerto Rico colourful? Was it really bright down there?
Yeah, so I found it amazing. I loved it. I loved every second of it, and you could tell that there was bleaching still. And I mean, we were lucky enough to go before. Obviously, Puerto Rico got hit by those devastating storms, and after that, people have gone back and I've heard that it's a lot worse. Obviously, because it all got battered. But I found it really colourful and just a different world. And going through the mangroves there were. Just I could do that forever. That was just.
I find mangroves really amazing too.
Yeah, they're so relaxing and I mean, I study what goes on man-made surfaces, and it's almost like that, but on the roots. And you just look at these gorgeous trees full of these gorgeous creatures, and you can get to watch these giant bulldog bats at night, and that was incredible. But then you just go under the water, and all of a sudden their roots are just covered in like the most crusty and the most like gorgeous creatures of barnacles and all these different things. And again, it's down to competition. The ocean is so full of competition that it's just growing on everything, and you can't believe that this gorgeous habitat exists where above land it's just gorgeous and below it's even better. And
Yeah, wow.
yeah, exploring all the little fish that like go in between the roots and everything. Yeah, that was my favorite for sure.
That sounds so exciting.
Yeah.
Now, I want you to tell us about the amazing world record held by limpets' teeth.
Yes. So I think in the video I said I did definitely limpets don't need a dentist, or I wouldn't want to be a limpets dentist because their teeth are incredible. So limpets feed on this on biofilm, which is basically a film that you can't see with the naked eye, of all this little life of like little microorganisms that live in it. But to eat it, they have to scrape it off the rocks, and if you're scraping stuff off rocks, then your teeth are going to get damaged.
You
Except
need
for the
tough
fact,
teeth.
yeah, you need tough teeth, and they have the strongest natural material known to man. So it's 6 times stronger than spider silk, which
That's
I think
wild.
should be shouted about more, because people always say about how amazing spider silk is and about
Yeah.
cobwebs, and you think, wow, yeah, okay, it is strong, and but 6 times more, and they're limpets on the rocky shore, and
Yeah, who
you never
knew?
hear about it.
Yeah, I had no idea until you told me the other day when I was watching your video. And you said it's stronger than steel. Like,
Yeah,
how can you even imagine that?
it's incredible. And I suppose coming from that like engineering side as well,
Mm-mm.
having and talking about engineers talking about all these different things, and it's just thinking nature's already done it. Like
Yeah, yeah,
like obviously work engineers do is they do all these incredible new materials that come up with, but they still are nowhere near what a limpet has done. And that's what
yeah,
people were trying to study it, to try and work out how they're doing it. And I just think that's that it's always a lovely reminder to me that humans have been here for such a short period of time.
mm,
Like, we always think that we do the best things, and we don't. And millions of years of evolution will continue to out top us for ages.
yeah,
I'm sure
yeah,
it'd be years before we work out, or if we ever do work out how it's done. And I just love that a tiny limpet on a rocky shore can kind of put me into perspective. If you're worried about
yes,
anything, or you're trying to think, you should think, no, we are in a world much bigger than even we have ever even been here. And it's just a nice reminder. I think I find it a comforting reminder.
yeah, yeah, that's amazing. When I heard that it was stronger than steel, I thought of Superman. You know how they say, like, Superman can bend steel with his
Oh
bare
my
hands?
god,
I was
yeah.
thinking, like, oh, able to leap tall buildings with a single bound, able to bend a limpet's radula with his bare hands.
Oh, I need to do that now. I'm just envisioning I'm gonna go away and I'm gonna paint a limpet as Superman now. Like
Do it.
that's so good.
I love it.
I think a limpet would like take on Superman. That would be amazing. Can you imagine like
Yeah.
Superman getting his comeuppance by taking on a limpet, and it
I
just keeps
know.
biting him or something? I don't know. His teeth reflect
I
its laziness.
I love that this, because limpets, because you just see the outside of a limpet and they're sort of grayish and like not all that flashy, and then all this like it holds a world record, and actually the picture you drew of it from the underside was
Mm,
amazing with the three like rows of teeth,
yeah.
and it's amazing. Like, you shouldn't judge something by how it looks, because this little creature is actually miraculous.
Yeah, and I just love that it's Olympic because it's so common. They're just everywhere, and they
Yeah,
just look like rock, and no one cares about them because they're just so overlooked. And I just
yeah,
love pointing that out to people. And that's the species that I think are just extra special, because it's just a reminder. Nature is amazing, and it shouldn't be
yeah.
overlooked. And and again, it's like one of those things of the argument sometimes with marine conservation and stuff is like, well, what does it matter in that sense
Mm,
of like, why do we need to spend all this money or change our lives so much to protect, say, a limpet on the shore? But
mm.
what we first of all, we don't know all the species that live in the sea, nowhere near the amount of species that live there. But imagine if something happened and we had treated the ocean badly and all the limpets left, and then say 100 years from now we have a massive problem and we need a material that's super strong, and we don't have that reference anymore. And how many species have we already lost that is a cure for something or could be used in a way that influences and inspires us? And we can't underestimate the value of that, using that inspiration of nature, because again, they're doing it so much better than we are. And I just love that a limpet that everyone has seen, or everyone knows about, or you can just see with your pair of wellies on the beach, can lead to thoughts and conversations about stuff like that, by learning about it and by researching them, and by people realizing that, wow, this snail has incredible teeth, and where could that lead? It's really exciting to me. That's why I love marine biology and communicating and talking about this stuff so much, because it's a bit of a big leap, but I think it's logical.
No, that's great. And like you say, like with marine conservation or with any conservation, it's difficult sometimes to convince people like that something has intrinsic value, like nature has intrinsic value, and you have to say, well, you could learn something from it, you could get a cure for cancer from it, you could make money from it. These things are not pretty ways of convincing people, but sometimes then that's the world we live in. Like, you have to convince people in other ways.
I would love to convince people just because I think as a limpet is cool anyway. I would love to convince them that just for the sake of it, I think it's awful to lose or a species like we are on this planet as equals in my mind. But if you can, that's the way, again, you said, that's the world we live in. If we have to put values on it, then that is, I think, a good example of we can find value in it. So I suppose any way we can try and convince people to change their mindset, and if that's a starting point, then that'd be great. But ideally I would just want everyone to just love the ocean, but that's, I think, an unrealistic goal.
So you go out rock pooling regularly. Can you talk about exactly what rock pooling is? You put on your Wellington boots and you wade out into the water. Tell me more.
So every day, it depends where you live in the world. The further north to the poles you get, the more tide, and depending on currents and things, the more tide you get. And so in the UK, we're really lucky that every 12 hours, but 6 hours each side of the tide, you get this whole stretch of expansive coast just open up. The ocean lets you visit for a while, and I love it so much. And all you need is a pair of wellies, and you can just head down and see what life is like. Within the first meter, I guarantee you could find at least 20, 30, 40 species you can find fish and barnacles and anemones and seaweeds, and there's so much on that shore that the more you look, the more you find, and it's really great. And the reason I love rock pooling so much, and I think it comes hand in hand with marine biology coming across as this inaccessible, you need diving and coral reefs, and I'd love going to Puerto Rico so much, but like that is a once in a lifetime trip really in my mind, because I'd love to go back. but it's not something that is accessible to everyone, and I feel very privileged that I've got to go. But rock pooling, you can go for the price of a wellies and a bus ticket to the beach, and I promise you that there is stuff on there that is as good as Blue Planet. I went rock pooling like 2 days ago and saw these little gorgeous gobies, and they were being territorial and fighting each other, and they were guarding each other and mating, and it's coming out in a video or whatever. And I just thought, this is literally, I'm watching my own Blue Planet episode here, and it's just trying to show people that like marine biology isn't just diving, and it isn't just the tropics, and it's right here in the UK. And actually, if we don't realise that, then we're going to lose a lot of our own species. Maybe not everything on their rocky shore. I'm not saying that it's all threatened and it's all going to disappear in an instant, but it's about changing our mindset, and about showing people that marine biology, you can do it if you're interested in that. And I do a lot of science communication work and going to like science festivals and talking with children and stuff, and it's shocking how many children at the age of 8 or 9 immediately discount science already and think marine biology is just something to watch on TV, and like, oh well, I'll never get the chance to do that, so why bother? And I'm just like, no, everyone, literally 20 minutes from your house you can. And yeah, it's like the gateway into marine biology, I think I see it as, which is why I go rock pooling so much and why I'm adamant that like that's what I need to be filming and that's what I need to be going and
Mm.
doing. I mean, sure, if I got the chance, I'd love to hop on a plane and disappearing. I mean, I don't know, I'd love to come to Australia and it's on my bucket list. And one day I will
Yes.
definitely come and snorkel and dive. And rock pooling in Australia must be incredible. But for the moment, it's just so incredible to be doing it here and
Mm.
seeing what you can do for almost free. So
Do you ever, as part of your science communication work, do you ever take people with you on the rock pooling trips?
it's definitely something I'd love to work towards. It's not something
Yeah.
that I've done so far, just out of science communication. Everything is kind of on top of all the PhD
Yes.
stuff.
The
So
work and yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I mean that is definitely what I'd love to do. I it's the bit I get the most enjoyment out of is
Yeah.
interacting with people, and at the moment YouTube is the way to do that. But I would love to be able to take and show people the rocky shore
Could be
because
so good to get like workshops or
mm,
lead tours and grab a whole bunch of kids or families and say let's all go out on a field trip and just point out everything and just do what
yeah,
you do on the YouTube channel but in real life.
yeah, I would love to do that. That is top of my list to get into and try and to show people because yeah, I would just love to interact and show people what and share what I know.
Yeah. When you finish your PhD, which direction do you want to go in? Do you want to continue in academia or do you want to do something like physical in the science communication field?
I mean I love both equally or in between. I don't think I could ever give up the science communication stuff. And so whereas when I started the PhD, I wanted to become a lecturer and I still do.
Mm-hmm.
But that love is coming from I'd love to share my experience and I'd love to teach
Yes.
in an academic environment. And you know, the lectures that I had such a good inspiration to me. I would love to pass that on to more students. But I don't think coming through the PhD, I'm realizing that it's not actually one or the other. I think that you can balance both.
Yes.
And I've been doing it during the PhD, which has been great. But I think at this point, I'd just love to move both forward. I'd
Mm-hmm.
love to
Mm-hmm.
continue. I love my research and I'd love to continue doing that, but I would want to do it having the opportunity to keep doing science communication and then I will see where it leads. I mean,
Yes.
eventually at some point, maybe one will get too big and the other will, but at the moment, I'd like to do both. And I think as well, it's important to recognize that in academia, we need to have good science communication and it needs to become
Absolutely.
part of it because my research is publicly funded as well. And so I feel like I have like an obligation. I feel necessary that, if my research is publicly funded, I need to be telling the public what I'm doing and not only just telling them in the paragraph that is required for me to submit when every year or something. I need to be telling them so they understand. And I think I've realised, yeah, there is like a split in academia sometimes where people think, no, science communication is a separate thing. And I'm very much
Yes.
for, yes, science communication. We have great science communicators. It's definitely its own separate thing. Academia can be its own separate thing, but I think you should merge the two. I think we should work together. I think you should be able to do it yourself.
Yeah,
Just,
I totally agree. I think when I studied ecology and conservation biology in undergraduate, and I just remember there was a real split. Like sometimes you'd get a lecturer that was passionate and excited and inspired you, and then there were some who had incredible knowledge about about their subject, and yet they couldn't tell
yeah,
you that. And and that was it's really hard when you go into a lecture and you see that person has like a lot of passion and a lot of knowledge about their subject, and yet it doesn't transfer because it's too
yeah,
heavy or because they can't communicate it. And then there's those ones that are just passionate and excited, and I can just picture you. I think you'd be the most amazing lecturer. I can see
oh,
that you would
thank
just
you.
inspire your students to love the subject.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's part of the reason I went into the PhD, and that's definitely my goal. Whether I get there in the next, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, it does. I'd love to do that at some point. And I agree with the knowledge you learn, but it often coincides with death by PowerPoint. It's just like,
Yes.
no, it's such a good, um, yeah, such a good topic, and so much, but there's that, that distance between it, and as well with the research, where people do this amazing, incredible research, and then they go and tell someone, and they're like, oh, wait, what? Like, you have no idea.
Yeah.
And I think being an interdisciplinary researcher, working both marine biology and engineering, it's helped me so much, because I can't tell you the amount of conversations I've had where an engineer will explain to me what they're doing, and I'm just like, I have no idea at all. And I'll explain to them, and they're like, I have no idea what you're saying. So you have to take it back to basic. And so all my
Yes.
conversations almost in my department are science communication, because I'm having to ask them, can you re-explain it in terms of like super simple? Let's go back to like, school terms. And
Yeah.
I'll explain mine back to basics. And it's been a really good experience having that, because otherwise I'd be clueless. I have no idea what some people do.
That's so interesting. Yeah. And so good. And so good to be able to be that middle person, that translator. And you do that through YouTube as well, because you're talking about things that are really complicated sometimes that people don't understand, but you do it so well in a really fun and entertaining way.
Thank you. That is always the goal. But yeah, maybe that comes down to that I practice on every day. When people look at you and like, what is a barnacle? It's like, okay, we need to go way back. Let's start at the...
Let's go. So I wonder, through all your discoveries and all your work and research and rock pulling, have you come across one species that has become your favorite species, or is it too hard to pick a favorite?
Oh, so I mean, I hope there's. Can I pick two? I'm going to go with two.
Two,
I'm
totally.
breaking the question. My favorite group of species is barnacles.
Okay.
I absolutely love barnacles. They are underrated and weird, and they're just the most bizarre creatures ever. And I just love the fact that, again, it's like the limpet. They are on the shore. You can't imagine a rocky shore without a good barnacle. And I love the weird thing about my fingers, always got slightly mini paper cuts in them from barnacles. And I can, because you go rock pooling and your fingers get all like rough, but you can spend the week then being like, I had a good day the other day, despite the fact that now when I put hand sanitizer on my hands, it stings like anything.
Ouch. Oh, wow. So tell me what inspires you, what's weird about barnacles, because I, again, just think, oh, yeah, they're just those little shelly blobs.
So there's one. This is not the only reason I love barnacles, but again, they have a world record-breaking fact, which is always a great icebreaker. So if anyone wants a good pub chat, this starts it off. Compared to any creature on the entire planet, they have the longest penis length to body ratio of any organism.
Really?
Yeah.
Hang on.
Yeah, I know. And it's because they choose to do so. Lots of things in the sea to breed decide to what's called broadcast spawning. So whether the tide, the temperature, or the moon or something will basically say everything on that shore will chuck up their reproductive cells at the same time, and they'll mix, and then those species will go on. Barnacles decide to do it different, which is why you always find clumps of barnacles together, because they decide to directly mate with each other. So they're hermaphrodites, they're all both male and female, but they physically have to get there. But obviously it's working. They're found on every continent in the world. And
totally.
And I study biofouling. Again, it's the stuff that grows on man-made surfaces, but barnacles are the bane of biofoulers. They grow on every man-made thing you put in the sea. They just take over. They're so successful, and that's part of the reason I love them so much. I mean, normally the goal is to get rid of them because they slow ships down and all this stuff, but just from an ecology point of view, from studying their life cycle and realizing that, yeah, sure, go for it. If it's weird but it works for you.
Yeah, it's working.
Yeah, they're so bizarre. The other reason I love them as well is that they can actually detect material properties. So they will settle on something, and they at this tiny little, I mean, it's like 0.01 of or 0.1 of a millimeter big, this tiny thing, and it can tell the differences between like rock or concrete or metal, and it chooses its favorite place to settle, and it leaves little footprints as it goes, and you can follow the footprints to decide and realize where it likes it best. And then when it settles,
tested, and then
yeah, and then when it actually settles, it's one of the strongest glues in the entire world. Like, I've tried to get barnacles off of things, and even with a chisel and a hammer, you just can't do it. It physically does not come off. It's incredible. And
what is that they use to stick?
They again, engineers have been trying to replicate, and they can't. It's one of those things. As nature is still still winning.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And the fact that they then produce like this tiny post-it note worth of glue to like find it, and then it's not until they know where they want to settle that
Then
they
they
go
do the
for it.
super glue.
Yeah, so I think barnacles are in my heart for that reason, because they're so linked to my research, but they also are just so cool.
Yeah, that is great. And so the second species?
Oh yeah, my all-time favorite species, individual, just one rather than a group, is the devil crab, which I've actually got a video coming out, probably be out by the time this comes up,
Okay.
where I find it to death, and they are just crazy. They are the most aggressive creatures on the planet. I will state that they genuinely probably are. I don't know how you test this, but they are just crazy.
Yes.
They're red eyes and these gorgeous blue legs, and they're a swimming crab, and they will just go for anything. And the first time I found one of them, I was rock pooling with lecturers, and I picked it up and was like, I've never seen this crab before. This is crazy. Like, look at this. And they were like, put it down, put it down, put it down. Because,
Really?
I mean, it can't do anything more than pinch you, but they just knew that it's so aggressive, and that's its way that it survives on the shore. Like, and the reason I found it in this video, you have to go watch it, was because I just put my hand on a rock, not even in the water, just on a rock near one, and it came out and pinched me. It went for me.
Really? How big? Did you say how big it was?
It probably gets to about phone size, and like about the size of an iPhone. It can get quite big. You can find them quite small.
That could do some damage if it was a bit that aggressive.
It could, but they're just hilarious because they'd probably take on a blue whale if they wanted to. Like, they literally don't care. They don't care what size they are, and I love using that as an example. And I've talked about it a bit, and I'm definitely going to talk about it more. Is that's how different species survive on the shore, is their behaviours, and the crab is just such a good example of it, because you've got this devil crab which is really aggressive, and you've got other crabs which just act like stones and don't really care, and that's how they live together. But yeah, and the fact that it's red eyes and called a devil crab, I love it muchly.
So it's funny that you mentioned crabs, because I was thinking about what my favourite marine animal is, and since binge watching your channel, the one that just stuck out in my mind is the cheerleader crab, which is a tiny little crab that picks up an anemone in each hand, and it looks like two little cheerleading pom-poms. Can you talk about this crab?
Yeah, they are really, really awesome. So they're not a species you find in the UK. They're found tropically, but they are just the cutest. And they're tiny as well. They're only, I think, about no bigger than 5 centimeters, probably even smaller. And they just pick up these teeny mini anemones, and they live symbiotically together. The anemone can pack a punch and help, but it also has a place to live. And I just think, being an anemone, I was looking at it from the perspective as well. I was like, isn't that the coolest thing to be, as an anemone? Like, if you were going to be an anemone, you would not want to be on the rocky, like on the shore or the corals. You'd want to be on the claw of a crab. And it just leads to this amazing, like, gifs and videos that you can just send people, because it's just this little crab with his little pom-poms doing this, and you're like, go for it, yay. Like,
it's just so funny.
Yeah, it's funny that I actually painted one for a friend the other day that I'm doing a PhD with, because you were all each other's cheerleaders, or I painted her one and just said, you're my cheerleader crab, feisty, but keeps cheering me on.
So I'm wondering, we talked a lot about marine conservation and about the future of marine life. I'm just wondering, to finish off, if there's something you have in mind, or you could talk about, that everyday people can do to help marine life. Like, what are the ways that people can go forward and start being responsible for marine life and the future of marine health?
Yeah, there's I'm going to go with what I think, which maybe isn't a particular action that you can take on an everyday scale, in the sense of, like, so there's lots of problems with plastic, and obviously recycling, and just cutting down emissions in general, all of that. But there's tons of information out there on that as well, and I feel like that is being very well communicated by other people and things. So picking something new, well, not new, but from my perspective, is what I've always tried to push, is more of a change in mindset. It's the reason I love the rock pooling side of it so much, because I would just encourage people to be more connected with nature, because that instantly leads to all of the things I've just spoken about, because you physically can't bring yourself to not take action. Because when you see like this gorgeous, there's that famous Blue Planet bit with a seahorse, and he's on that like cotton bud, and everyone is so gutted about that seahorse. But then you don't realise that, I mean, here in the UK we have seahorses in the Thames or on rock pooling. The
Wow.
UK has one of the world's most degraded ecosystems of oyster reefs, and no one knows about it because there's not that connection, and I think it's just been lost, which again for the UK is very weird, being such a coastal small country. And so I would just encourage people to go out and see it for yourself, because even taking a walk and just learning about it and just changing that instantly changes your mindset, because that fish that seahorse you saw is not on the TV anymore. You've
Yeah,
physically
absolutely.
seen it, and you just, that connection, I can't undersell how important that is for us to be able to move forward, because otherwise I don't know how we're going to make such massive changes to help save the oceans and the threats, because it's got to the point now where it isn't. You can all take great daily steps, but we all need to take daily steps, and we need to push for legislation change, and we need to keep an eye on fishing regulations, and you don't, that's so too much to ask for people. Sometimes it shouldn't be, but it's straight away. If you just say to people, you need to do this and this and this, and they're like, why? But suddenly, once they've been there, once they've seen it, it's become something you want to do, and something that's so much easier to jump into. Yeah, once you're
Yeah,
connected. So that would be my thing.
yeah, I 100% agree with that. And it's always been my thing as well that you have to move someone in order to get them to behave in an environmentally responsible way.
Yeah.
And you can move someone with like devastating images of birds wrapped up in plastic or whatever it is. And you can also move someone with, like you say, with connection, with wonder. If you
Yes.
make someone wonder at something like, whoa, that's amazing, then you've moved them as well. And I think also that you can move them with humor and with enjoyment and pleasure, and you absolutely do that through your
Oh,
channel. So
thank you so much.
you're doing it. You're doing an amazing job.
Yeah, yeah, that's really well put. That is exactly what it is. And thinking about it, the kind of the term, the branch for that is actually ocean optimism. So if people want to, look at that, there's like hashtags on Twitter and everything of people doing ocean optimism, and it's just saying like,
Wow.
look how great this is. We can do this. We can save this. This doesn't have to be. And that is great. And I didn't know about that movement. I just kind of got there on my own. And now I've met these people as well, that like conservation charities and stuff like that are using ocean optimism as that platform to try and it's right. It's moving people through wonder, because I would just be heartbreaking to see it go in the wrong direction. And that's what motivates me. So I hope that's what motivates others too.
Ocean optimism. That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been so good. So much fun. Thank you.
No, same. It's been so much fun, and thank you for asking me to come. And thank you for doing the podcast and all of the nature journaling. I love seeing it, and I love that this is what the online world has meant. We can talk around the world and discuss this and meet new people and form a community. So I'm very active on social medias too. So if anyone wants to come and join in and send me their rock pooling stuff
Yes.
as well, I would encourage people to totally do that, because it's just so much fun to see.
Can you say how people can find you online?
So I have my YouTube channel is called Marine Mumbles, and I have a website which is www.marinemumbles.com. They will find more about me and just how to ID species and links to my videos and everything. And my Twitter and Instagram is also Marine Mumbles. So it's all kind of under the same umbrella. So hopefully you won't go too wrong if you search for that in Google. They should pop up.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this conversation all about the wild and wonderful things you can find in the sea. Nature journaling on the ocean shore is not as common as other types of nature journaling, and I've been so inspired by Elizabeth to take the next opportunity to head to the coast and see what I can find. I hope you've been inspired too.